So just in our lives, sometimes we can see that we can allow suffering for a greater good.
We allow our own suffering. We don't allow other people's suffering. If we are moral, if we are just.
I don't agree, because I think that with children, sometimes we can see a time that we sometimes allow our children to go through something tough.
Like what?
There's many instances that we can see, like I'm sure just even with you, because we've all experienced that our parents didn't save us from every single bad thing in the world. Sometimes they allowed us to go through tough situations. Like when I first moved out, for example, and I was getting low on the rent, and I called my mom to pay my bills, right? I said, Mom, I'm getting low on rent, I need you to pay my rent. And my mom said, if I pay it for you now, I'll end up paying for it for the rest of your life. And so my mom let me go through that tough time. She let me go through some suffering, and at the time I didn't understand it. I had no idea what was going on, but it led to a greater good. And so just because we can see this really small thing in our own lives, that sometimes we allow suffering to accomplish a greater good, I think that at least shows that it's possible that can apply to God, because also in the life of Jesus, we can see that God allowed suffering in the life of Jesus, which was when Jesus died on the cross. As Christians view it as the worst thing that's ever happened, right?
It's not really the worst thing that ever happened to a person, is it though?
No,
but I could think of more painful
I'm sure you're very
tortures than being crucified.
Right, but the reason we think it's one of the worst things that ever happened is because God himself, who's perfect, he's actually the creator of all existence. Like, people should have actually greeted him when he was born, on bended knee, right? But he came into existence, he did wonderful things, he tried to bring the kingdom of God to people, but what did we do to him? We ended up crucifying him, right? So I think this is a terrible thing, but 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead, and this was the greatest thing that ever happened. I think your point is, you're trying to say, us Christians, we talk about Jesus' big sacrifice, right? But if he knew he was going to rise anyway, who cares, right?
Yeah, it's not a big sacrifice.
Well, so first I'd challenge your use of the word sacrifice, right? Because what we think happened then was that what Jesus did is he died as a sacrifice for sin. And so what was the requirement of a sacrifice? It was just that physical death. And so it's Jesus' physical death that paid the price for sin.
Before religious, make it clear that Muslims don't even think that Jesus got crucified. It was someone else.
God made somebody to look
somebody
like Jesus, right?
looked like him, and they crucified somebody by mistake. He never died.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so.
But, so to say this is not a big sacrifice, well, I would just challenge the word sacrifice, because the requirement for a sacrifice would be physical death, and that's what paid the price for sin. You're just saying it's not a big deal. Well, that's just your personal opinion, because suffering is a terrible thing to go through.
Yeah, but okay. First of all, I'm not saying being crucified is easy. Okay, obviously it's a horrible way.
Right.
First, but the thing is that the Christian faith believes that is the hardest thing anybody could go through, and there was a suffering for the sins of everybody that believes in Jesus, which is another problem, because somebody this is not a very just way of. If somebody harms me, if somebody kills my child, all of a sudden they go to Jesus and they ask for forgiveness, and they killed my child, and all of a sudden Jesus forgives him for killing my child. I'm like, first of all, let's say he killed my child in a very, very painful way, more painful than Jesus' crucifixion. So that suffering was supposed to be suffering for everybody, which is, I think, it's not suffering enough, because if you want to be just, my child will suffer more than Jesus. And second of all, I would be like, who the hell are you to forgive this person for killing my child? How's that just? How would you consider that just? If wait a minute, why do you forgive me? First of all, I have to forgive him. My child has to forgive him. All of a sudden, you're forgiving him for something that he didn't even do to you. How is that justified?
You're trying to say, you don't think that scapegoating is what you mean?
Yeah.
I think scapegoating is just that one person can take the punishment for someone else.
Yeah.
Well,
like imagine if you're a judge, right? And somebody comes to you and he's like, you're supposed to sentence somebody, and somebody comes and like, this guy, like killed my child, and you're the judge, like do something. And he's like, you're as a judge, you're like, all right, I'll forgive you if you believe in me, and if you tell me that I'm awesome. And the guy was like, okay, you're awesome. All right. Now here's my son, tell him that he's awesome too and you believe in him. And like, okay, your son is awesome too and I believe in him. And like, okay, I'm going to sentence my son, not you, to prison, or I'm going to electrify him or something. I'm going to torture my son, and then you're good, you can go. Like, as the person that I came to the judge to complain, I'm going to be like, what the hell just happened? Right?
Well, first off, I wouldn't say that God is saying, first off, we believe that all sins, right? Anytime that like people do something like murder or theft or whatever, abuse to your child, we would say that all sins are first a sin against God. That so if someone murders their child, they're first sinning against God.
Well, if
and second,
I would disagree as a father of a child.
Right.
I would disagree.
I'm just going to tell you what I think, right? And so we first think that if I were to abuse your child in a certain way, that I would first be sinning against God, but I would also be sinning against you personally. And so God has set up a system that like Jesus has taken my punishment, right, for that sin, that offense against God. That so justice has been served, that like justice has been served in Jesus, right? That Jesus has suffered and died for my sin. But that doesn't let me off the hook at all for my sin against you. There's justice that must be done in this world. Mm-hmm. But as far as eternal justice, like where I'm going to spend eternity, that justice has been served. I can know with confidence that even though that if I have sinned against you and your child, that I can ask God for forgiveness, and with confidence I can know that I am forgiven because of what Jesus has done. If I accept Him and that Jesus becomes the Lord of my life. But as far as my sin against you, yes, I deserve the full measure of the justice system. I deserve to go to prison for the rest of my life.
But what if you don't go to prison? What if so you're relying on this world's justice system for the crimes against me, and God is not responsible for that?
You mean for like how it's laid out?
So
during our time on Earth?
Yeah. What if you die without paying for your crimes?
You mean that like you're left with a feeling that justice hasn't been served?
Yeah.
As far as like justice in this.
Let's say Hitler, right before he died.
Yeah.
Right before he died, he got on his knees. We don't know what happened there, right? He got on his knees and he was like, "Dear Jesus, I am a horrible person. I believe in you. Forgive me for everything." And he really meant it, and he really believed in Jesus. And at the very last minute, he was like, he basically asked Jesus for forgiveness and everything, right?
He'd be in heaven.
He'd be in heaven right now.
And
you don't see a problem with that.
I don't see it. I understand that it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and it makes me uncomfortable because it makes me uncomfortable. But that's the truth, because if that's what he did on his deathbed, then he would be forgiven.
But I'm not gonna.
Because let me tell you that what we believe as Christians is we think that the wages for sin, like the justice that is due for us sinning against God, we could never pay it. We can't, right? No matter how hard we try, no matter if it's such a horrible crime like genocide, or if it's what we would consider to be smaller crimes, we can't pay these bills. But God has made the decision that He Himself would pay that price if only we believe in Him. And so even a terrible crime like that.
Okay, well, since we don't have a Muslim here, and we should, I'm going to say what a Muslim would say. A Muslim would say that when you commit a crime, and if it's against God and against a person, then God would not forgive you unless that person forgives you. So in the Islamic faith, you're supposed to, there are crimes that you commit against God, and there are crimes that you commit against other people. And when you commit crimes against other people, God won't forgive you. You have to go to that person, and that person has to forgive you. And unless that person forgives you, your God is not going to let you off the hook.
Well, let me tell you that other people forgiving us is a really big deal. Like us as Christians, we can't hurt people, ask God for forgiveness, and then forget that person.
Yeah.
Like we're called to accountability and responsibility.
It's not, well, not really.
Us as Christians, this is what we're called to do.
You could basically, there's a short, you could not, if you want forgiveness, you could completely ignore the person that you committed the crime against. You could go straight to God.
Of course, you could do a lot of things, right?
Yes.
But that's
but
not
in Islam,
the
you can't.
Christian
In
law.
Islam, you have to ask forgiveness from the person that you have committed the crime to. And I think
well, I'm glad
that makes more sense, a little bit more sense, doesn't it?
Well, I think it makes sense in a sense. I don't think it makes sense that if a person doesn't forgive you, then God won't either, because we all know lots of people who are incredibly bitter and will never forgive anybody.
Yeah, well,
and
that's your problem. You shouldn't have committed the crime against them.
Well, I think that all of us commit crimes against people all the time.
Yeah, and the thing is that they say that your punishment is going to be not as harsh if your crimes is not also that, for example, if I steal from somebody, in Islam, they don't think you're going to be burned forever for stealing from people. Maybe you go to heaven, but your level of happiness is less. I don't know. There's different views of these things in Islam. But I think, let me just backtrack a little bit here. I don't think what sounds better is true, right? Because as an atheist, a lot of people don't like the idea of just my idea of our view of if you die, it's over. Like, well, I'm
right.
talking about so.
It's either true or it's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to sound.
It doesn't have to what's true is independent from our preferences. But when I'm talking to theists, I do use what's more fair as an argument because they believe in it. They believe that God makes things fair, God is just. So when I point to unjust things that are unjust about the Islamic definition of God or the Christian definition of God, doesn't mean that I think things should be just or things that are just or fair in this world. It's just basically contradicting their view.
You're right, and I think that's a good way to argue because we say God is a God of justice.
Yeah.
But if you have instances where God is not just,
that's a contradiction.
Then that's a contradiction.
Yeah, and again, when it comes to argument on evil, if I use it to contradict God's being just, it wouldn't be in this world, because again, I could argue that this world is insignificant. I would argue what God is planning for us in the afterlife. That's going to be harder to defend. Because that's for eternity, that's forever.
Okay.
So if I want to use the argument of evil, and if I want to use it against the Christian God or the Islamic God, I would say both the Christian God and the Islamic God, their view of just is if you don't believe in Jesus, or if you don't believe in Muhammad, you're going to burn for eternity. And how is that just?
So you're asking, what about the people who haven't heard about Jesus, or they don't?
No, they heard of it,
or they rejected him, and it's not fair.
How's that fair?
Well, I would say that it's not fair that we get saved in the first place. Like, it's not fair as far as our justice system goes.
The fact
how we would view it, right? We're going, wait, somebody, because we were just speaking about, we don't think it's fair that somebody else can pay your price, right?
Yeah.
But like the way that we view this is that like God himself has set this up that like he himself can pay the price for us, right? And so
price for what? He created us, and all of a sudden we're playing this game where nobody asked us if we want to play, and the penalty of losing is burning for eternity, and then we're supposed to be grateful because if we win, it's going to be awesome.
If I were to use that line in a court, like if I were to commit a crime, right?
Yes.
And then my defense is, hey, nobody asked me if I want to even play this game.
But the thing is, God created us. the court didn't create us, right? The court is like, yeah, I'm punishing you. I'm not responsible for you existing. God apparently made this universe and put us here, and I can't quit. The thing is that winning this game is kind of a puzzle, because I'm not just supposed to be good. I'm supposed to find God, even though he's hiding, in my opinion, apparently. If there is a God, there's no signs of him. I have to believe in him. I have to love him. I have to thank him. And being a good person is not good enough. And if I'm a good person,
do you think that you're a good person, or that there are any good people?
I'm not going to make a claim about me being a good person. I'm just talking about a good person, and not a good person, right? Like a person.
I wonder what your definition of a good person would be.
Okay, here, let's say a person that has been kind to most of the people in his life,
like
charitable.
Do you mean like a high percentage of being good to people? Because I think it's a very shaky ground.
I mean, we don't have to define what a kind person is. I think most people have the same definition of what a good person is.
Because I just would say when you think about like good people, most people try to say like they do more good things than they do bad things, is what most people would call a good person, right? But I don't think that good deeds actually outweigh bad deeds, right? Like for example, if I had murdered 4 people, right, a family of 4, and I'm on a bus and I'm on my way to my court trial, and a bus of school children, 25 kids, plunges into the lake, and I plead with the guards to let me off the bus because I could save them, and they allow me to jump off the bus, and I save these 25 kids, right? And I show up to my trial, and for murdering these 4 people, and my defense is, well, God, I'm actually a really good, judge, I'm actually a really good person, because I know I murdered 4 people, but I actually saved the lives of 25 children. Right. No one would think that it's just to allow me off for those murders.
Yeah, but
so good deeds don't outweigh bad deeds.
But if you're going to use your analogy, let's say that guy didn't murder anybody, in fact saved 25 people, didn't murder anybody, but didn't believe in the judge. I don't think you're a good judge.
I think people do that
God,
all the time.
Yeah, but here's the thing. God is a judge that would be like, okay, I know you saved 25 people. I know you didn't kill anybody, but you're not realizing how awesome I am. So burn for eternity. That's the God. That's the kind of God that the God of the Bible and the God of the Qur'an is.
Well, I would say
he's pretty self-centered. He wants everybody to believe in him. He wants everybody to thank him. He wants everybody to realize how awesome he is and how merciful he is. And if they don't, no matter what they did, they burn forever. How's that just in any kind of definition of the word just?
Well, first I would like to challenge your kind of idea of hell, right? Like hell, you're trying to present that hell is this place of torture and burning and stuff.
Well, if you disagree with that, that would be...
Just follow me for a second, right? Because like, what we believe as Christians is like, yes, we believe that hell is going to be a terrible place, right? We do believe that there's going to be burning there.
People are going to be burning and
right.
pain. Okay.
We believe that there's going to be burning there. We believe there's going to be people with gnashing of teeth, right? But like what we think is like, no one is sent to hell by God. God doesn't just like send you to hell. Like we believe that people choose not to believe in God.
It says in the Bible that God does send you to hell.
I think that people are sent there as a judgment. That's right. But I think that like people make these decisions themselves. They choose not to want to be with God. And so, for example, like you don't believe in God. You don't have a relationship with Jesus. Therefore, that would be your judgment. That could be your judgment at the end of.
So I would go to hell based on Christian faith, and I will burn forever.
This could happen. I don't think your life story is over. So I don't know.
But if I die right now,
I don't know. You might make a last minute confession. Who knows? But just follow me for a second, right?
Yeah.
So you don't believe in God. You don't love God. You don't want to spend eternity with God. So what would really be unjust is if God were to be some kind of cosmic rapist to say, I don't care, and he's going to grab you and pull you into heaven to keep you there, right? So we believe hell is this place that people actually choose to go because you don't want to be with God.
Nobody would choose to go to hell if they knew bad hell. You're saying that I would choose not being with God over God if I knew there was a God?
I'm saying the choice isn't, hey, do you want to spend the rest of eternity in paradise or in a terrible place? Of course everybody would choose paradise. Right?
Yes. You're saying
I'm saying that if the only people that are going to hell in the Christian faith, the only people that are going to hell are people that reject God. Nobody's going to hell because of lack of information, or like nobody's going to...
Oh, so if you're an atheist, but you're an atheist because you didn't have enough information, you're not going to go to hell? Is that what you think?
That's not what I'm saying, because like we actually, as Christians, we believe that like God has revealed himself in creation and in conscience, right?
So it's obvious, you're saying?
I personally think so. Yeah.
You think God is obvious?
I understand why people don't think that. But
so if you understand why people don't think that, if I don't see it as obvious at all,
let's solve it. Let's finish on hell, right?
Okay.
So like what C.S. Lewis once said, he said that like the door to hell locks from the inside. Like this is something that people choose for themselves and do for themselves. I would just also challenge. I was just like, I know you don't want to get into like a Bible debate, but like when you keep saying you're going to burn for all eternity, like you're getting that because hell is called the lake of fire, right? And so I just would want to say that like. You have to think a little bit more about what that means, right? Like what's really going on there. All people, everybody on the planet has actually sinned against God, right?
Yeah. And
they can't pay that price on their own. And so that some people can escape what their punishment should be, which is death and hell. Some people can escape that because they can have substitutionary atonement through Jesus Christ. Like Jesus came, suffered, and died in our place, so that when we get judged one day, God doesn't look at us based on what we did. He looks at the life of Jesus because we have a relationship with him. But those who stand on their own and say, I'm a good person, or like I've done these things, and I've done good things, I deserve this and that, it's not good enough, right? If they try to stand on their own, they can't pay their own price, so that they'll be cast out of God's presence.
Okay. So,
and I think that
the key between going to hell or heaven basically is believing in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's all about...
Kind of like everything else is irrelevant. The things that you've done.
I wouldn't say irrelevant, but as far as...
That's a key thing. That's the main thing.
I wouldn't say irrelevant because I challenge like your words when you said earlier, like this world is insignificant, or like the things that we do are irrelevant, because these things are very important. They're everything. But the thing that matters most in life is who you know. And if you know Jesus, then that's the most important thing.